there was a clip. RFK Jr. was on CNN. I believe it was yesterday, maybe 2 days ago. This is a really good clip. CNN asked RFK about Trump being a threat to democracy and tried to get a clip validating CNN's own claims of Trump being a threat to democracy, but he actually gave them the opposite. He claimed that Biden is a much larger threat to democracy than Trump, saying he's the first president to use federal agencies to censor political speech. So, that they tried to bait him into, it appears the left is trying to, they see RFK Jr. as a threat to them, and RFK Jr. is more of a threat to Biden than he is to Trump, I believe. I believe Trump's supporters will support him no matter what. He's got a very loyal group, and the middle ground or the moderate part of the Republican Party is much smaller than the moderate part of the Democratic Party. The Democratic Party is going so far to the left, it's losing its moderate group, and the moderate group of the Democrat Party is much larger than the Republican Party. And especially with this administration, this is the most radical and woke administration we've ever had. I mean, not even the woke part of it. When have you had an administration go so far to the extreme of its political party than this administration? So the middle ground is much larger on the Democratic side than the Republican side. So somebody like RFK Jr. is a much bigger threat to Biden than he is to Trump. So it appears that, the left and organizations like CNN are trying to pull RFK more to its side than Trump's side and trying to bait him to say things and get clips of him like this, but it backfired on them. And he's right. I mean, the threat to democracy is lawfare, censorship, and constant division, which is what you get from the left. And I'm not saying Trump is a uniter by any means, but Biden's inaugural speech, he claimed that he would unite everyone, even the people that didn't vote for him. And instead, he's launched a war against the MAGA Republicans and has been nothing but a divider. He's not a uniter, he's a divider. And like I said, I'm not saying Trump is the perfect uniter either, but Biden is such a divisive president. I mean, his war on the MAGA Republicans, all he's doing is going further to the left. He's not coming to the middle and uniting both Republicans and Democrats like we need. He's going so far extreme to the left, he's waging a war against the Republican Party. Lying, gaslighting, and hiding information from its own citizens is a threat to democracy. I talked about this earlier in the episode. The not providing of information to its citizens if China was directly involved in the Baltimore ship accident, which is starting to act like they know that they were, that is a threat to democracy. Not providing the full information to its citizens and hiding information suppression, that is a threat to democracy. Not allowing free and fair elections is a threat to democracy. And I'm not even talking about specifically any suspicious widespread fraud within the voting in 2020, but the suppression of information in terms of elections. That's election interference. That's a threat to democracy. You have places like Google hiding information on Trump and only promoting false hit pieces on him during times of an election. That's election interference. And you have big tech bowing down to the left and doing whatever the left tells them to do. That's propaganda. You have organizations like Google and they control the information essentially. Nobody goes to, the library or books anymore. Google is the main source of information for everybody around the world, but especially here in the United States. So when you weaponize Google to suppress information and promote information you want promoted, that's election interference. So I'm not even talking about the suspicious voter fraud that went on in 2020, although there was a substantial amount of that. Maybe not widespread enough to claim it wasn't a fair election. I mean, there was isolated incidents of voter fraud. But I'm just talking about the suppression of information. One of the key components of a republic and a democracy is the access to information. not allowing certain information that you don't want allowed because it doesn't further your agenda and hurts your agenda, you're no longer a democracy. You're trending towards an authoritarian government. And that's what the left has been doing for years. I mean, it really took off during the 2016 election, and it even ramped up. It ramped up even more during 2020, not only with the election, but with COVID. So that is a key sign of a threat to democracy. You don't see Trump. I mean, he doesn't have the power to do so, but you don't see him, suppressing information on Biden. Obviously, like I said, the big tech organizations like Google lean more towards the left, but you don't see Trump trying to suppress information on Biden. He wants information on Biden because he trusts his voters and the American people to make up their own minds and see what Biden's screw-ups are. Suppression of information is, like I said, a key component to seeing a fall of a democracy and trending towards something that is not democratic. Trying to keep your opponents off of the ballot based off technicalities with the law, that is a threat to democracy. The whole insurrection technicality that they're trying to use against Trump, even though he didn't incite an insurrection, January 6th was not trying to overthrow a government. And I'm not going to go down the rabbit hole today about all the FBI agents in the field on January 6th. I will eventually, not right now, but the using technicalities within the law, trying to keep your political opponent off of the ballot, that is a threat to democracy. That's not allowing a free and fair election. If you think that there was an insurrection and that Trump is a threat to democracy because he tried to overthrow the government, trust the voters to make up their minds on that. What you're doing is you're not trusting the voters to be able to make up their own minds, use common sense. You're telling them what to think, and you're telling them that you're imposing fact. You're saying this is a fact that this happened. I'm not going to let you make up your own mind on it. Just trust me. He did this, so he shouldn't be on the ballot. And thank God the Supreme Court ruled against that. But you also have Biden threatening the Supreme Court. He did it in the State of the Union address. He threatened the Supreme Court based off their overturning of Roe v. Wade, but I guarantee you it wasn't just because of that. It was because of their ruling in the Colorado ballot case. They voted for allowing Trump on the ballot. And I guarantee you that was not just for Roe v. Wade. But how insane is that? We have checks and balances for a reason. And when you have a president openly to their face on TV threatening the Supreme Court justices, that is crazy. You want to talk about a threat to democracy? That's a threat to democracy. That is an authoritarian leader. That is somebody who is threatening another part of the government. Like I said, we have checks and balances for a reason. We have Congress and the Supreme Court to hold the president in check, right? So when you have the president wanting to go rogue and threaten those people, that is, I don't know what a bigger threat to democracy is. That is a large threat to democracy. The State of the Union address, not only that aspect of it, but it was a glorified political campaign rally. That is a threat to democracy. When has the State of the Union ever been to further political motives? When has it ever become a glorified rally for that president? It'll be bigger than any rally he's had outside of that. So maybe he was using that. I don't know. But if you look back, if you were to tell presidents like Ronald Reagan or any former president, George Washington, Abraham Lincoln, you told any of them that the State of the Union address would turn into that, they would be disgusted. And rightfully so. The State of the Union is to unite the nation, to come to the U.S. citizens, the ones who are for you, who voted for you, the ones who are against you and didn't vote for you, to unite them and tell them the truth about how the State of the Union is. Instead, we got lies. Instead, we got political agendas. We got propaganda because he didn't talk about the record high inflation. He didn't talk about, he started off the speech talking about a war against another country that we're not directly involved in. Although we are, because our own president started the State of the Union talking about it, but we don't have our own men fighting Russia. Why should we start our own? This is a state of our union. This is not the state of Ukrainians' union. This is the state of our union. Why are we talking about Ukraine? This is supposed to unite the American people and tell them truthfully how the state of the union is. And we don't provide information. I mean, that's the good and the bad. You don't provide information on what's going wrong in our country and how the plan to fix it, while also talking about what's going right in our own country. He barely even talked about our own country. When he did talk about our own country, he talked about the Supreme Court overturning Roe v. Wade and then threatening them. So he didn't talk about the State of the Union. It was a glorified political campaign speech. That is a threat to democracy. Now, obviously, Trump is not perfect, and yes, he made an attempt to get Mike Pence to somehow keep him in office. But our guardrails as a democracy, in place as a government, they keep those things from happening. Trump promoted global peace, strong borders, and a fantastic economy, and the filter is our guardrails. Obviously, Trump is a narcissist, and Trump is, he's going to do things like he did in 2020 when he believes there was widespread voter fraud to keep him in office. But our guardrails as a democracy is a filter. You filter from the good from the bad. You can get the good parts of Trump, like the global peace, strong borders, the fantastic economy, record job growth. And no, Biden can't claim that when he gets it after COVID. All the jobs that were gone from COVID. Oh, all of a sudden they're back. COVID's over and I can claim the job growth. No, Trump had record job growth besides COVID. So when you can get all the good stuff from Trump, and the guardrails are the filter between the bad stuff when his narcissistic traits come and he tries to, keep himself empowered. Those guardrails are in place for that. So who's trying to get rid of those guardrails? Biden. Who's trying to get rid of our democracy and our checks and balances? Biden. Who's using lawfare to keep his political opponents off of the ballot? Biden. Biden is trying to get rid of the guardrails of a democracy. The bigger threat of someone staying in power and getting rid of the guardrails and stuff that keeps him from doing that, the bigger threat of someone trying to stay in power illegally is Biden and not Trump. You want to know why? Because Trump hasn't made an effort to get rid of those guardrails. He fell victim to it. Biden right now is effectively trying to get rid of that stuff to keep Trump from running again. So, like I said, constant lawfare, election interference, and threatening the Supreme Court, there's many more, but those alone show who the biggest threat to democracy is, and it's not Trump. Biden and his administration is the greatest threat to democracy that this country has ever seen. We've never seen an administration go at the foundations of our democracy for its own gain like this administration has. They're focused more on trying to figure out a way to keep Trump off the ballot than stuff going on within our own country. They're more focused on that than the record high illegal immigration, the terrorists pouring through our border, the record high inflation, the constant wars that we're involved in. The world is on fire since Biden has been in office. It wasn't that way during Trump. There was peace during Trump. Look at the Abrahamic Accords. We're about to have we've never seen peace like that in the Middle East. And Trump helped get those deals done. And instead, Biden comes into office and we have full-fledged war in the Middle East. So like I said, Trump's not perfect, but the guardrails that are that filter for him, on the other hand, Biden is trying to get rid of those guardrails for his own gain and to keep people from running against him. That is the threat to democracy. The side that is trying to keep a political opponent off the ballot is the threat to democracy. They claim that conflicts like the war in Ukraine are a, quote, fight for democracy, and that we're such a beacon for democracy globally that we have to protect a democratic country like Ukraine, although Ukraine's more of an oligarchy than a democracy. They're the most corrupt democracy. Look what's going on right there. They're using the war as a reason to not have elections, even though you look at the United States had elections during the Civil War, World War II, right? And we're the beacon of democracy. We had those elections during those times. You're not having an election. Zelensky is turning into an authoritarian over there. So claiming that we're fighting for a democracy like Ukraine is funny to start with. They're the most corrupt democracy on earth, although we're giving them a run for our money right now. But anyways, when we claim that we're supporting Ukraine as a fight for democracy against a authoritarian country like Russia, shoot, what's going on here in the U.S. is not much better than what's going on in Russia. We're throwing our political opponents in jail, or trying to. And look what we did to the innocent members of January 6th, the ones who didn't go and, I'm not going to go down that rabbit hole right now, but I will some other time. But what's going on here is not much better than what's going on in Russia in terms of lawfare, throwing our political opponents in jail. Obviously, it's not to the point to where people like me who oppose the government can't speak openly about it. I don't have to worry about getting thrown in jail. Although everyone has to worry about the CIA and NSA spying on you. And look what they're doing to Julian Assange. Julian Assange is a great example of it. Everybody has to talk about Alexei Navalny. Look at what's going on with Julian Assange. And our shadow government is keeping him in jail because he openly exposed what they're doing illegally. You want to talk about democracy? That's not a democracy. Throwing people in jail because they oppose you, that's not a democracy. That is going towards authoritarian dictatorships, right? So Trump is not the threat to democracy. Biden is the threat to democracy. You don't see Trump trying to keep Biden off the ballot. And I guarantee you, if Trump wins and Biden's going to run against him again, I guarantee you we'll get round 3 in that case if that happens, if Trump wins. You won't see Trump trying to keep Biden off the ballot. He wants a full, fair election. And although, like I said, he went off the rails a little bit, our Democratic guardrails kept him from doing that. Those are the same guardrails that Biden's trying to get rid of for his own gain. So you can make up your own mind. Who's the bigger threat to democracy, right? The side that's promoted constant lawfare to try to keep Trump off the ballot, off of ridiculous claims. I mean, look at the fraud case in New York. It's ridiculous. They're trying to bankrupt him. And, it's pretty easy. If you look at it through common sense, not listening to what the mainstream media outlets, especially the ones that lean towards the left and what they're telling you and what the Biden administration is telling you, then you'll see clearly who the bigger threat to democracy is. It's not Trump, it's Biden. And we've never seen a more polarizing figure and divisive figure than Biden. Because Trump was divisive, but that's because of his... he did his own part in that, but he didn't have a full-fledged war with his non-voters like Biden has. Biden has openly started a war with the MAGA Republicans. They've started their own, it's like a slur. They coined their own like slur for Republicans, calling them MAGA Republicans. That's what they do. That's part of the propaganda. So now whenever you hear and MAGA, God forbid we want to make America great again, they've turned that into a coined negative term that they use on people that don't agree with their political beliefs. I mean, that's propaganda. Coining phrases like that for your own gain, you're brainwashing people. So you tell me who the bigger threat to democracy is. It's not Trump. I guarantee you that. Watch the State of the Union address, and that'll tell you all you need to know about who the bigger threat to democracy is. It'll send chills down your spine that we have this guy as our leader, and he's having propaganda-like speeches in the State of the Union. It's scary. And, if Biden gets elected again, we're going to go down a path. Democracy will look a lot different. And some people may not even call it democracy anymore. We're on the cliff of that right now. And if we don't change course, then it's not going to be a democracy anymore. It's going to become something much darker and much different. So, I don't know. You tell me who you think the bigger threat to democracy is. And I guarantee you look at what's happening and what's taking place against Trump with the constant lawfare and the efforts to keep him off the ballot. And that should tell you all you need to know about who the biggest threat to democracy is.